What's up? If you don't know who I am, my name is Villainus. I'm a revolutionary rapper and a revolutionary organizer. I've been organizing for over 12 years, rapping for like 6. So come fuck with me. We about to talk about why abolition, my nigga.
Walking through the crease and the cracks of the streets, struggling for some food and a bed to sleep, while trying to cause overthrow. I'm feeling weak, ideology buff.
Everywhere we look, we see the impacts of COVID. Our favorite stores shutting down, losing our jobs, the petty $1,200 stimulus doing jack shit, no second one in sight, and losing loved ones left and right. As we hit this second wave, I can't help but ask, what about the places we don't look? Places like prisons. Are they immune or just unspoken of? Are they necessary in the first place? In truth, COVID is plaguing the prison system. With its substandard hygiene facilities and lack of any type of basic consideration for those in prison there. Using COVID as yet another excuse to strip people of their rights within those walls, while simultaneously exposing incarcerated people to the virus in the first place through systematically violating social distancing. So very literally, the prison guards and the prison system is responsible for killing those inside. To the point, there has been uprisings within the prison system, sparked by the introduction of the virus through forced interaction with guards and refusal to grant them basic safety precautions such as masks, sanitizers, or gloves. Around 200,000 cases have been confirmed within the prison system. There's been at least 1,454 fatalities, but it is guaranteed to be very underreported, with infection rates being up to 850 times higher than the general population in some states. We see their lack of competence to handle any type of outbreak. But what if it isn't just a lack of competence, but a lack of respect for human life? I remember back in the days of Katrina, the Bush regime, along with local government, showed us exactly how little regard they have for Black life, especially when you add carceral enslavement to the mix, where they left people locked in cages, where multiple folks died from seizures, heart attacks, and drowning, both witnessed by those locked inside and by the guards. They even ordered one person on the roof with a shotgun to kill anyone who tried escaping the rapidly flooding Orleans Parish Prison, also known as OPP. After those held within broke their way to safety, they were rounded up and transported to the Broad Street overpass, where they were held outside on sweltering blacktop while surrounded by barking, vicious police canines, which in the end ended up costing at least one more person their life. Not to mention afterwards, the local and possibly federal government covered it up. But times must have changed, right? They couldn't be doing that now. And the answer is they have been repeating the same behavior in recent hurricanes. There have been ongoing campaigns put on by Fight Toxic Prisons that force the prisons to evacuate during hurricanes. As climate change picks up steam, it will continue to be the enslaved that pay the heaviest costs. From flooding cells to guards abandoning them to starve, locked in them damn cell blocks. It is the revolving cycle, just like their doors. When Hurricane Laura hit, again people were locked in cells with unlivable conditions, no water or food for days, and refusal to evacuate by officials. When people inside organized a protest, the police put it down with force, still refusing to address the danger folks were in. In fact, they were bragging about the affair. There is a long list of hurricanes preceding and after this, where these patterns continue through multiple states. So what is this shit, right? It seems like they don't see them as human. To truly dive into why they dehumanize incarcerated people, we must dive into the past. We must travel in time to the age of enlightenment, to the age of chattel slavery. In chattel slavery, Black folks were considered 3/5 of man. They were considered beasts of burden to be used and exploited. Then there came this novel idea that slavery should be abolished. Was that really ever the question? There is a story that is told to us about this great man, Abraham Lincoln, this white savior who came to free the slaves from these vicious Southerners. But is that the accurate portrayal of history? The answer is no. It in no way describes the true complexity of the situation. I'm going to skip past the part where I tell you that Abraham Lincoln was not an abolitionist and that chattel slavery ended only because of the resistance of slaves. And I'm going to go directly to Abraham Lincoln's 13th Amendment and how it industrialized slavery. So the myth is that the 13th Amendment ended slavery, but the reality, it did not. Instead, utilizing the clause, it continued slavery in an industrialized way as prison slavery. Slaves thinking they are headed to freedom found themselves instead headed to shackles. While slave masters were paid reparations, black codes and vagabond laws swiftly stripped away the newfound liberation, throwing many black men in the spirals that they could not pull out of, utilizing convict slave labor to build vital infrastructure, and at points, even leasing convicts to private individuals. After trial and error, plus exponential development, it turned into a huge industry, an industry that grew powerful enough that it could influence laws, especially around law and order. Little drug war here, a little stop and frisk there, and then we got a whole bunch of Negro slaves, criminals. Now, as we reach the present, we see that this industry has no interest in the safety of the community. They place community members in prison that amount to torture and slavery. Oftentimes, these prisons are Superfund sites. Superfund sites are polluted locations in the United States requiring a long-term response to clean up hazardous material contamination. These contaminants seep into drinking water or inhaled from the dust. Long term, it can cause cancer among the plethora of diseases. Not to mention the fact that the government is more than comfortable experimenting on the imprisoned. These experiments were some of the breaking points at Attica.
We are men. We are not beasts, and we do not intend to be driven or beaten as such. The entire prison populace has set forth to change forever the ruthless brutalization and disregard for the lives of the prisoners here and throughout the United States. What has happened here is but the sound before the fury of those who are oppressed.
The Attica prison uprising was sparked from the abuse of people behind those prison walls, happening in the shadows of the murder of George Jackson, which led to a 4-day standoff between the enslaved and their captors. Those imprisoned inside Attica had 27 demands that they wanted to be granted, which, given their demands being that outlandish things like legal representation, end of political repression, end of racial persecution, and other such things, it is clear the amount of abuse that was found to be acceptable by the government. The standoff ended with police coming in and massacring 39 people and attempting to blame it on those enslaved. The problem with that story is nobody that died that day died from knife wounds, but instead bullet wounds from the police guns, including the guards and the prison staff who died. Afterward, the survivors were made to crawl on their bellies through the mud where guards selected people by marking them with white X's. Those marked were forced to march through a gauntlet made of guards, being beat the whole way through. No mercy, no understanding, no respect for human life.
An awful scene. William Kunstler has said that people are dying in there, and I agree with that. I think that there are people that are dying in there, and the scene is I'm gonna cut this off. Helicopters are still flying overhead. It seems there was an announcement from the helicopter right above me to the inmates below that they should put their hands on their heads and come out. I don't know whether anyone has died inside. But I'm upset. This is unfortunate what has happened here. Whatever happens, after the situation here at Attica, a penal system here in the United States And the people who are kept inside of them will never be the same.
As traumatizing as the response to Attica by the state is, trauma itself is fundamental within the prison structure. The very idea of prison is punitive. It is based off inflicting trauma on already traumatized people. Not to mention, being ripped from your families and a home by armed men in itself is extremely traumatizing experience. Then afterwards, to be forced to strip naked in front of a stranger in a cold, gray room is adding even more trauma to the mix. All before you've even been booked into custody. That's not considering the reality that this pattern has been going on for generations. People have been losing friends, families, role models, and even parents to this beast. Being forced to fight for scraps in this dystopic monster of a society called capitalism. This monster sees us as prey to feed its bowels. Its digestive system is called the justice system. And our communities are seen as just crops for the harvest, animals to be poached. And the poacher comes with badges, paddy wagons, and the sanction of the U.S. government. The impact of which leaves generations of children without parents, especially fathers. The impacts leave communities both economically devastated and with broken families. The truth is, this reality has economic motives. Actually, in cities like mine, it has a couple. The first way is to push out the undesirable low-income community, utilizing civil forfeiture and over-policing, so that the property can be reallocated to more lucrative prospects. Then we find out the second economic reason. As my high school graduates to prison, no joke, it was full-on reunion. It was as if we were always going to end up there to work as slave labor. Within prison, all essential services, save medical, if you can even call it that, are done by those held inside. Not only that, we have things like Unicorn that trains convicts skilled labor to utilize them as a military slave labor source. Then once upon release, are not able to utilize those skills due to being branded a felon. Recidivism? Is that where you like lick the LSD out of someone that's tripping's pores? Bro, nah, dog. It's the rate that people are being released from prison and expected to return. Not only is it the military-industrial complex that profits, but all these parasitical corps and supercorps got their hand in it too. Many household names make mass profits from prison labor, from Nintendo, Microsoft, Whole Foods, McDonald's, BP Oil, and even American Airlines, among a long list of other businesses that you may or may not know. In fact, not even our schools escape that dreadful reality. The school system, including colleges in states like mine, are legally obligated to get their furniture and other supplies from prison slave labor. Yes, even your tuition goes to furthering slave labor at the profit of those colleges and those institutions. If that doesn't bother you enough, there's also the reality that children who are incarcerated are being used to fight forest fires, like the ones that have been devastating the West Coast. The disregard for life even extends to children. The heroes that you were praising in the forest fires were actually men, women, and children enslaved through this carceral system. We are about to go and talk about what we can do to make change and what has been happening. But I must first take a moment to recognize some lifelong abolitionists who have recently passed, whose impacts are felt across this country. And not only by activists, but by those who are at this moment stuck behind those walls. Over the last week, we have lost two incredibly powerful and revolutionary women, and the abolitionist movement will not be the same without them. Rebecca Hensley, I met you when I was traveling through the South, when the comrade Jordan was like, yo, we have to go meet Rebecca. They are a dope-ass organizer that has so much history in this abolitionist movement. They have so much knowledge to share, and you will probably have to beg them to stop sharing it. Jordan was right on both parts. I am forever grateful for the amount of knowledge they were able to share with me and the amount of laughs. And I will forever remember you for your legacy of work, for liberation of ours who are behind the bars and those of us who survived them and have loved ones still there. Karen Smith, your power radiates through this movement. Since day one, I could tell that you would be one of the most powerful and inspirational people I would ever meet. Yet, you were always able to carry an air of humbleness wherever you went. I remember I met you at the first convergence I went to. You were out there grinding art that was made by folks who are inside, making sure that they could have money on their books and support their families. Something so subtle spoke so much of your integrity and your immense power. I was devastated when I heard that you passed. With both you and Rebecca within 24 hours too, it just seems unreal. Like everybody else has already said, it just seems like you were invincible. I look forward to seeing you again in Gainesville. And part of me still does. My logical brain knows that you are no longer on this plane. My heart just can't believe it. But the thing I know is despite all the shit, you wouldn't want us to slow down, but to apply the pressure. This video actually being made instead of sitting in the lab has a lot to do with you. And to tell you the truth, at first, I didn't want to make it. But then I asked, what would Karen do? Yeah, not what would Jesus do, but what would Karen do? So to be clear, the new diss for out-of-pocket white women is Susan, because Karen Smith is too dope for her name to be dragged through the mud by them. Karen left behind 2 amazing children, so I ask that folks please go down into the link in the description and support them. They deserve every drop of love people can give in this time of crisis. Now it's time to go to the part of the video that both of those comrades would be most excited about: how to resist. It feels like there needs to be a 3-pronged approach. One is through mutual aid. One of the major weapons of carceral state is the ability to divide people inside from those outside. Mutual aid may come in many forms. Sometimes it's things like maintaining correspondence. Other times it's things like bailouts, which are things that help mitigate the fact that the system preys on poor people of color. One example of an organization doing that and doing that direct work is Black Mama Bailout. The second way is through direct action. Some of Fight Toxic Prison specialty. Direct action takes many forms. In the case of the hurricanes, mass phone zaps were the most effective. In the case of stopping proposed prisons, on-the-ground campaigns were most effective. Protests and demos can take many forms, but it is essential that they have strategy. Protests with no strategy is just performative. I encourage people to find the places that are causing harm and damage in your community and hold them accountable, whether it's the police, the courts, or the jails. The third, most broad sweeping, is divestment. That does mean to no longer call the police, given that the only real power they have is incarceration and murder. But it is also refraining as much as possible from spending your dollars at institutions that profit off prison slavery. Make sure instead that your dollars go to support community programs. And maybe even that cat hustling CDs on the corner. Self-plug, because the real major source of crime is economic disparity. And the wealthy use their prison system to extract more wealth from people at great detriment to us and great benefit to them. We can once and for all abolish slavery, or we can once again just call ourselves enlightened. But if we choose the former, the most important thing is to be creative in the ways we resist.
Oh shit, I made it. Yo, it's Villainus from the future. My present self was just about to tell you about the workshop we had Tuesday, but because of the zombie apocalypse, we weren't able to drop the video on time. So, I came back to tell you that if you survive the zombie apocalypse and weren't able to make the workshop, but want to host a workshop, this is an expansive workshop about the prison industrial complex and why we should abolish it, then you can email me at overthrowmedia@gmail.com. Alright, good luck. Survive.
That will also be in the description. Speaking of workshops, Fight Toxic Prison Zoom tour will be starting soon. The workshop will be covering not only the history of prison slavery, but FTP's victories over the prison industrial complex, including stopping proposed prisons and supporting in mass bailouts.
Peace. This kinetic justice of mine of the Free Alabama movement. If you've been following and keeping up with this movement lately, you know we've been talking a lot about organizing brothers on the inside and coming together. You know what I'm saying, on the peace and unity, you know, putting the foolishness and all the petty differences aside and coming together, because, you know, it's obvious that, you know, the Department of Justice findings are not going to be enforced or not, you know, no one's going to be held accountable unless we push the issue. At Free Alabama Movement, we've been talking about doing something and doing something soon. So, you know, I'm coming to you first live telling you, Free Alabama Movement, we calling for a 30-day economical blackout of the ADOC. You know what I'm saying? No work from January the 1st to January the 31st. You know what I'm saying? We boycotting secures. We boycotting excess corrections. We boycotting all people who benefit from the labor of people incarceration, the people who benefit from our dehumanization. So we calling for a 30-day blackout, an economical blackout, a 30-day economical blackout of the ADOC.
Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Make sure to hit a like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you've learned or what you can share, and hit that bell to stay notified. Don't forget to leave hashtag Villain Squad in the comments with a little sword emoji so I know you one of the squad. I fuck with all y'all for rocking with me this far. If you've already donated to Karen's family and got all your needs met and you feel inclined to support this channel, you can cop a dope-ass t-shirt off of Teespring, or you can, you know, become one of my in-squad, the Patreons, and support this channel on a monthly, you feel me? I gotta shout out to all my Patreons who keep the lights on, who keep this content coming out. Without y'all, this wouldn't be possible. Special shout out to Richie, because he really dived in there and helped me find the articles I wanted to leave as sources for y'all. All right. Catch y'all later.
Walking through the crease and the cracks of the streets, struggling for some food and a bed to sleep, while trying to cause overthrow. I'm feeling weak, ideology